Recording is on.
Welcome to the Global International Pedagogical Forum, IPF 2020, which I'm representing now. My name is Lilith. Today, my guest is Dr. Joaquim Segales, a professor at the Veterinary School of the Autonomous University of Barcelona, researcher of Animal Health Research Center in Barcelona. Honorable Professor, we do appreciate that you took your time to participate to the forum and answer our questions.
Thank you very much, Lily. My pleasure.
In spite of the fact that there is a huge amount of information about the coronavirus, there is still doubts about the existence of the virus. So the very first question is if coronavirus really exists.
Well, I must confess that this question surprises me because it's, at least from a scientific point of view, there's no any single doubt that SARS coronavirus 2 does exist and that SARS coronavirus 2 is able to cause a new disease, which is named COVID-19. So it's coronavirus infectious disease 19. And this is nowadays a very important pandemic. In fact, very few pandemic has affected the mankind in the last 100 years. And this is probably one of the most important ones, together with the famous Spanish flu of 1918. So from this point of view, that we have a novel virus which is different from the previous known viruses. Even we have a close member like SARS coronavirus 1, the one causing SARS 18 years ago, but this is clearly different, and certainly there's no single doubt that there's a new virus and a new disease associated with the virus.
Okay, so it's not just an ordinary flu, it's something more serious, because many scientists talk about also the synthetic nature of the COVID-19, that the virus was developed in laboratories. What do you think?
Yeah, I believe that nowadays there's no any single evidence supporting this hypothesis, because sometimes it's amazing how those things work, because if you are supporting that this is a kind of naturally evolving virus, you have to give proofs about that. And I believe that phylogenetists and evolutionists have provided a very nice set of data based on the sequences of the virus, that this is a natural evolving virus. However, there's a lot of conspiracy theories. And when somebody puts on the table about the conspiracy theory, it's amazing. There's a lot of people that wants to believe it, even without any proof behind. So from this point of view, I believe that nowadays we have quite solid information about the natural origin of this virus, which probably originated in bats, because bats are a tremendous reservoir of lots of viruses. So do not hesitate that in the future, if we are not changing our mood as a mankind, probably new infections and eventually new pandemics will occur. I'm pretty sure about that.
Okay. And how to deal with this virus COVID-19 and what to do with pandemic? Because it's widely spreading.
Yeah, in fact, this is something that I believe everybody has been learning on the track, because at the very end, when the very first cases appeared in China by late 2019, probably they did not expect to be a new disease, because a number of clinical signs resembled those of flu. So probably the very first idea was we have another flu, even it was the typical season for flu, so it was very easy to change one for the other. However, the things evolved, they were slightly different, and finally we got the very first sequence of the novel virus by January the 10th, 2020. And since then, certainly this virus has spread in a very easy manner. Of course, combating a virus like that mostly implies, of course, to have potential vaccines, to have antivirals that work, etc. However, in front of a novel virus, this is very difficult. And the point here is that the policy of lockdown, social distancing, etc., has really used in order to flatten the curve, the famous flattening the curve, because one thing that we should not afford as a society is the collapse of the health system, because of course this was a terrific danger in which a number of people simply could not be attended properly. So those measures have been helping a lot in diminishing the transmission of the virus all over the people. However, and of course, we saved the healthcare system in most of the cases. However, another important issue related with the infection, which is the very typical veterinarian wording, which is herd immunity. I believe at this stage, in most parts of the world, if not in all parts of the world, we have not had a herd immunity yet. In fact, we are far away from the concept of herd immunity.
Okay, and pandemic is widely spreading. How many people actually get sick at this moment? And what about the indicator of infected doctors and nurses? I mean, the numbers.
Well, in fact, this is very difficult to give sound numbers, basically because not all the countries have been following the same policy of testing. So the ones that they have been testing more, probably they found much proportion of infected citizens. The ones that almost didn't test, obviously, it's exactly the opposite way around. But let's say the official data that we have nowadays through the World Health Organization is that more than 4.5 million of people got infection. At least were confirmed by RT-PCR, which is the typical technique used in order to detect the viral genome. However, based on other type of studies, which are mainly based on antibody detection, probably there are much more people that have been infected. However, this increased number of people might be is 10 times more. Very recently, we had one study here in Spain in which we have found more than 250,000 infected people confirmed by RT-PCR. And when we did serology, we confirmed that, at least by proportion, only 5% of them, of the whole population, would be infected. This 5% would be around 2 million people. So if you are making the numbers easily, it looks like that based on the numbers that we have confirmed infection, there's 10 times more the number of people that may got the infection all over the world. So it's easy that we are talking about more than 40 or 50 million people based on the data that we nowadays have. Might be tomorrow we will have other kind of data and we may give different numbers, but it's clear that it has been quite widespread. However, not enough, as I told you, as to get herd immunity. About healthcare workers, the major problem is it was at the beginning. Nobody was prepared for such easy transmission, especially when you are close to a sick person. And this was a major cause of a significant number of infected healthcare people. However, soon afterwards, people realized and all individual protection equipments were in place. And nowadays, the number of healthcare system personnel infected is much lower compared to 2-3 months ago, where everything started in most of the countries.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the very first beginning, about the China. So China turned out to be faster and more efficient in the fight against the virus. Wuhan is open now, but most of the countries in Europe and all over the world are in very difficult situation. How can it be explained? What's the reason of that? Maybe we can explain it by the disease monitoring system that China uses based on the example of SARS. And is there any other countries who uses such monitoring systems?
Well, I believe that, of course, monitoring systems are compulsory in order to follow up whatever kind of disease, being epidemic, pandemic, or whatever. However, China might be, because of the previous experience with SARS coronavirus, the first one in 2002, 2003, probably learned the lesson. And when in Wuhan, they start having a significant number of cases, but very few deaf people, they locked down the whole city. Of course, for European and American eyes, this kind of lockdown of a city of 11 million people was like a kind of a shocking situation, because we couldn't expect that this would work at all, because people moved, etc. However, afterwards we have experienced lockdowns, and we know that this is feasible, and in fact that lockdown and social distancing prevents the transmission of the disease rather efficiently. The difference, in fact, is because China started doing the lockdown and social distancing very early in time. When I'm comparing the situation of some European countries or some American countries, we did exactly the opposite. Italy and Spain, which have been hit importantly by the disease, we did our first lockdown when we had already 100 dead people. So 30 times more than China at that time. And we were too late. Simply, we were too late. Of course, it's very easy to say this now after everything passed away. But the point is that looking retrospectively, most of the countries in Europe, or at least some of the countries in Europe and Americas, simply reacted too late. And it's true that there are some other countries like South Korea, like Japan, like Singapore, that they reacted quite fast as well. Or even some Nordic countries in Europe, the Scandinavian countries, if you don't consider Sweden. So there are some countries that they did the action very early in time, and of course the pandemics hit it in a very different way.
Okay. On January 7, 2020, virologists from Wuhan University warned of a coronavirus infection and released into the world fully defined pathogen genome, so that everyone could as quickly as possible develop the kit for researching this issue around the world. So has anyone dealt with it?
Well, in fact, I believe that China, at the very end, has been quite transparent with all the situation. Because, of course, sometimes here in Europe and in Americas, we are blaming the Chinese researchers that they were not transparent enough in terms of commenting about the disease, the evolution of disease, etc. But since early January, February especially, the amount of science published or showed as a preprint coming from Chinese scientists is huge, is extremely huge. So I believe that at this stage, China, of course, first of all, they were dealing with something which was unknown. There's nothing worse to have an unknown disease in which you do not really know which is the cause. Because it could have happened also here in Europe and Americas, because first of all, if you see respiratory disease in the peak of the winter, the very first insight is, oh, probably this is flu. Oh, but there's might be an increase in mortality. Well, but each season is different, depends on the virus, etc. So first of all, it was very difficult to foresee that was a new disease. But I believe that when everybody realizes that this was a new disease, the information provided by Chinese scientists has been extremely, extremely useful for the whole world. So from this point of view, I believe that this information was the very kickoff point in order to improve everything related with research, especially in development of diagnostic techniques, and RT-PCR as number one. But anyway, I believe that it was very, very important to share all that information.
Mm-hmm. Great. So you mentioned that COVID-19 is a new disease. So as far, what do we know about COVID-19 at this moment? I mean, we know the average incubation period, it's 5 to 10 days. We know risk groups, men and women over the age of 60. We know that asymptomatic carriers can infect other people. What else can be added to this list? And if I'm correct?
Well, I must be clear on that. Even we have evolved very rapidly in terms of COVID-19 knowledge, and this means that we know lots and lots of things, take into account the youngst of this disease, because we know COVID-19 since January 2020. This is just 4 or 5 months ago. And in 4 or 5 months ago, as I told you, the research, the clinical research, the experience with the disease has been huge. However, 5 months is not enough. to know perfectly a disease or a virus. So from this point of view, I believe that we have learned how to deal with a pandemics when there's no vaccine, when there's no an effective antiviral treatment yet for that. Even there are a number of studies going on. So from this point of view, we have learned quite a lot. But there's still lots and lots and lots of question mark, because, for example, and specifically thinking on the pathogenesis, why the youngs are almost not affected from a clinical point of view, why the old are tremendously affected, at least in certain percentage. Of course, comorbidities may affect. So concomitant diseases is a hit for all people. But anyway, the individual evolution of the infection in a particular individual is still a kind of conundrum. So we do not really know how it evolved particularly. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that in the next month and in the next years, much more will be known, especially in terms of vaccine development, because this is something that sooner or later we will have vaccines in the market. Antiviral drugs, I'm pretty sure that sooner or later we will have effective antiviral drugs, or even other kind of therapeutics like antibodies. So there are a number of groups in the world working for that. So there's still lots and lots and lots of research ongoing. Another important lesson to be learned from this situation is that, first, healthcare systems are fundamental. So I'm thinking on the governments all over the world to invest in a healthcare system is important. Second, preparedness. If we are not prepared to do research, especially thinking on novel infectious diseases, this will be a mess. In fact, we have experienced in the last 10 years severe research cuts in budgets. So these, of course, have not helped nowadays to respond adequately to the pandemic. Of course, we try to do our best, but it could have been better.
And why is COVID-19 so dangerous?
Well, basically because it's a novel virus. And if it's a novel virus, this means that presumably you have all mankind as susceptible. So if you have, let's say, such 7 or 8 billion of people susceptible to a disease, you have to protect those people. So this means that even a number of persons are or might suffer from a mild disease. We know that there's a certain percentage of people that can get a very severe disease and die, as we have experienced. Take into account that we do not really have immunity for most of the population. The danger situation is to do nothing. The strategy of to do nothing is not affordable. Will never solve the situation. So from this point of view, it's still a very dangerous infection. Might be in the future when vaccines will be available or the herd immunity will be achieved, then this virus might behave as similar as a seasonal disease, for example, a seasonal respiratory disease. But anyway, it's too early still to say something. So we can make predictions, but we need time in order to be sure about what will happen.
And what about the immunity? Does immunity develop after the virus, and how long can it protect us?
Well, this is another of the issues that it's needed to be answered, in the sense that regarding the question, does SARS coronavirus 2 induces a protective immune response in infected people? Most of the people develop protective immunity. So from this point of view, I believe it shouldn't be a major problem. Is it possible, however, that there's a very small fraction of the population that might be this immune reaction is not good enough, and might be it's not protective enough? But again, it's too early to say something, because we need to follow up immune responses to a longer periods of time. Now we are still in the middle of the pandemics, even of course it's 4 months ahead already, but it's too early to say something. And regarding the duration of immunity, we do not really have any idea, because being so recent epidemics, of course, we need time in order to know for how long it will last such immunity. However, if we should compare with the previous SARS of 2002, 2003, one thing that we may speculate is that the duration of immunity could be similar. And at that time, it was something between 1 and 3 or 4 years. So it could happen that for SARS coronavirus to be similar. But again, I'm just speculating. We do not really know because we need to spend such a time in order to be sure.
Okay. There's also a lot of conversations about that. Will summer temperatures really help us to stop the flow? Because it depends on the season.
Well, this is a hope. So we believe that the hot temperatures will not facilitate the transmission of the virus, but again, it depends on the real situation in each country and in each situation, because of course, the summer or the highest temperatures will not stop virus transmission unless we are doing something to help stopping it. And social distancing and I wouldn't say lockdown, but social distancing mainly, and might be the use of masks may help, because even when we are talking about other diseases like flu, if I'm infected, being summer or winter, I'm able to excrete. And if I have people close to me, I can transmit the infection. So from this point of view, it's true. The virus will survive in a bad manner in the exterior, outside, etc. Because of course this virus is quite sensitive to the radiation, to the sunny days, to the high humidity, etc. So of course this means that the virus present in the environment will difficultly survive. But the virus that I can have myself as an infected person will be able to transmit anyway. So from this point of view, I insist, unless we get the kind of herd immunity provided by natural infection or by vaccination, this virus will still round with us, and even during summer, in which might be the number of cases will be lower, because look, with the tremendous lockdowns that we have experienced, one thing that we achieved is to diminish in a very significant manner the transmission. So if we are continuing this social distance to a certain degree, it's very likely that now that in the northern hemisphere we are going to the summer, probably we will really reduce the transmission rate, and then the summer could be quite nice from this point of view in terms of having problems or not with the disease. However, we have to take into account that if we are relaxing too much the social distancing measures, the cleaning of our hands, the wearing mask, etc., what could happen in the medium long term is that the number of infected people increase again. So the possibility of a rebound is there. And I believe that we as a society, we should be very conscious of that situation. So and of course, governments, and especially everything related with the healthcare system, continuous monitoring is compulsory, is very, very important.
So how can you get sick of COVID-19, and what measures should be taken not to suffer from it?
Well, the best strategy in all cases is to avoid getting infected. So this kind of avoidance is mainly achieved by means of this social distancing, especially regarding sick people. So the idea is that sick people should not be in close contact with let's say, healthy individuals. Of course, those sick people have to be take care. So we have to take care of them. So this means that if we have to have some relationship with them, we should wear individual protective equipment in all cases. So at the very end, right now, we start knowing a little bit about the virus, and we know how to avoid transmission. So this is the most important issue. Another important side fact is that the healthcare system is very important, because as long as we are detecting cases with COVID-19 like symptoms, it's very important to trace those cases, be sure if there's infection, and in case of infection, to quarantine, isolate those people, because it will be the way by which we prevent new infections. So at the very end, I believe at this stage in which vaccines are not yet here, those will be the most effective manners of avoiding infection.
Okay, so you suppose that self-isolation and quarantine that many states imposes are most efficient measures against the coronavirus?
Well, in order to diminish the transmission rate, certainly has been very efficient. However, life goes on, so we cannot stay at home all the time. That's very clear. So we have to return to what is known as the new normality. In this new normality, however, it will not be the same normality that we knew until February this year. Probably at least for a number of months or even few years, probably this kind of social distancing will have to be maintained at least to a certain degree. So, of course, I do not expect lockdowns, because of the lockdown is terrific at the very end, and of course it jeopardizes economy, it jeopardizes psychology, it jeopardizes a number of issues. But it's true that in this new normality we will have to try to prevent these infections as much as possible. And when I say quarantine or self-quarantine, is in the particular case that the person is sick. I'm not saying for everybody. If the person is sick and has been diagnosed, the logical way of thinking is make at least a 2-week quarantine, unless you feel worse and you have to go to the hospital. And of course, we have to trace the context in order to avoid people that might look symptomatic but excreting the virus. So from this point of view, it will be very important to make this kind of surveillance. But anyway, the rest of the things, in the sense that we will go to the supermarket again, we will go to the shop, we will go even theater, cinemas, and things like that. Again, social distancing measures will apply. So this means that we are changing our way of life for a period of time, and we do not know for how long. I believe so. This will happen. Yeah.
What can you say about the current situation in Spain now?
Well, in Spain nowadays, for example, the number of new cases has been dropping quite a lot. So from this point of view, it was the main reason why I said that the lockdown worked quite well, because even in certain areas, especially here in northeastern part of Spain, where I'm living, for example, the reproduction ratio, which is the number that tells you how many people an infected one can infect, and it's below 1. So to be below 1 ensures you that the disease or the infection is not progressing in terms of transmissibility. So from this point of view, I believe that the people did a good job in order to prevent such transmission. However, we have to see how this evolves, because of course, the red light would be in this monitoring that at a given time point, the number of new cases start growing again. Because if this happens, new measures will have to be applied.
Okay. So can we say that the situation is under control?
At this point, I believe that, and especially thinking on the healthcare system, in which the intensive care units are much below the values that we had during the peak of the pandemic, I believe that the situation is rather under control. However, being under control doesn't mean that there is no cases. It means that the number of cases is much, much lower than before. However, this means that we have to keep an eye making such surveillance and be very stringent. Because if for the first wave, we were too late in most of the countries, the Western European countries and Americas, we cannot be late for the second one, because we already know what to expect from it.
And the last question, when the vaccine appear?
Well, if you look at the number of news or even comments based on politicians, the vaccine should come this year. The reality from a scientific point of view, and what the World Health Organization communicated already several months ago, is that having a product in 1 year, 1.5 years, it would be great. And it wouldn't be only great, it would be a world record, because vaccines, in order to be licensed and be used in the general public in a systematic way, usually takes a number of years. So if we are able to get a product in 1 year or 1 year and a half, it would be great. For the reason, I do not think that we will have any vaccine available for 2020. And if we are lucky, we will have in 2021 and probably the second half of 2021. However, we have to be clear as well. There are a number of vaccines nowadays that they have been tested already in animals that undergo what it's called phase 1 in terms of clinical studies. This means that we have started testing those vaccines in human beings. However, those very first studies, and especially on the side of safety, which is a tremendously important concept, and of course, very important as well, immunogenicity. So until this reaches the phase 3 and finally the licensing, I'm pretty sure that this year and a half will be absolutely needed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for your interesting interview and valuable opinion. Stay healthy and safe.
Thank you very much. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.